Cellar. Just got done watching one of my favorite TV shows, BattleBots. Of course, I've talked about that before. But it gets me in the mood to do one of these. As this comes out, Paizo just released the Orc license for RPGs. What effect do you think it will have on the RPG industry and writers? Also, when we were at GaryCon, we went to a couple of OGL seminars and others with Troll Lord Games. Got to chat with Steven Chenault. Great guy, isn't he? And was totally impressed. After playing D&D since 1980, I've decided to switch and try Castles and Crusades. You'll probably enjoy it. As I read the books, I am thrown back into AD&D mode. This will be a fun experience to teach my 5e players this system. Yeah, I'll bet it will. Especially when they find out they can die. What? What do you mean I can die? Castles Crusades is a good system. Gary contributed to some of it. I don't know exactly how much, but I do know he was involved. He and the trolls were heavily involved in some stuff for a few years. It's a good system. Their siege engine combat system is something you ought to look at. XP for deer for hunting a deer is not going to happen in my world either, but role playing out a hunting fumble could. Well, now that's kind of cruel. And this is a friend of mine who sent this. Who the hell is gonna go out and say, okay, I'm going out and hunting, when there's nothing to be gained? You might fumble and shoot your foot off. In fact, I had a friend, he's passed now, many, many years ago, and he was an avid deer hunter. And this guy was gritty. He'd been a Green Beret. He had bullet scars all over his front and his back where he walked, triggered an ambush, and he went deer hunting. He was climbing down a tree, and he was using an old Winchester lever action, and the trigger caught, boom, shot him in the leg. So he walked 2 miles, got in his truck, and drove himself to the hospital. I gotta think that any savings in room and board that would be offset by going out and hunting a deer and bringing it to the innkeeper would not be worth the risk of a hunting accident. Okay, I'll give one opinion on the movie now that I've seen it and seen the complaints. I wanted a fun D&D movie just like I'd want a fun campaign. I'm not going to nitpick and pull it apart when, at the end of the day, it's just there to entertain me. People are too worried about meta and canon. Hollywood doesn't give a crap. They just want to entertain. Success, in my opinion. And now these are 3 that were replies to this. And there are plenty of actual play shows out there, if that is what you want to see. I don't get rules lawyering movie either. Good point. I agree. People mad because their unrealistic expectations weren't met. That one may have put a finger right on an interesting idea. Heck yeah, games and movies are leisure activities, should be fun. Ignore the negative criticism. I agree. We've had a bunch of time to look at this. I saw something about making $111 million in the first week it was open, or some such number like that, which, sounds like gazillions of dollars, but I don't know how much I haven't bothered to see how much it costs to put it together, and to make it. But, that's not automatic, franchise, but we'll see how it plays out. I predict there'll be a lot of return tickets purchased to go see it again. Perhaps more than some others might be, certainly, except the the very successful serial movies that we have out there. That's right. The movies, leisure activity. It's for fun. Yeah, I thought it was fun. I think the person that said something about not met their high expectations might have put their finger on it. Let's face it, we all have imaginations much greater than anything we can see on the screen if we put our mind to it. And because it wasn't what our imagination conjured up, shouldn't make it bad. It should be something ours didn't conjure up, so let's try something else. But that's my opinion. Hello there. I'm going to be running a game for completely new people on Friday. Unfortunately, we're playing online, but anyway, I've been looking at the hex maps of Greyhawk, Faerun, and Blackmoor. Great maps, but how could I do the same? What are your tips for maps? Well, depends on what kind of maps you're talking about. If you're talking about outdoor maps getting from point A to point B, I say use hex maps, like a 1-inch hex, and just put notes or put a number in that hex on your map, and then in a separate notebook next to you, hex number such and such, a description of what it is, what may or may not be there, and then the next one. And you don't have to go into great detail, because you may find that if you simply put that it's heavy vegetation, that as the thing goes along, all of a sudden a band of howler monkeys are in here, or some annoyance, just because it develops organically with the telling of the tale and the doing of the adventure. That's for outside. Now you're gonna have you're gonna have a hex that's gonna have your target in it. Now, depending upon the size of your hexes, 1 mile, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever. If you have a 1 mile hex, you may well have underground that spills over into more than one hex, depending upon where it is. So think about that. I imagine it's usually better, in my experience, it's usually better to try to keep the majority of the subterranean stuff in a single hex in terms of the outdoor. Now, if you're talking about indoor maps, don't knock yourself out with a beautiful map, something like Dyson Logos would make, gorgeous maps. And he makes beautiful maps. Don't get me wrong, Dyson, you do great stuff. However, you as a beginner don't have to do that level of stuff. Your map is just for your reference, for you to keep your east, west, north, south, up, down level. It doesn't have to be a thing of beauty. As you get experience making cruder ones, you may find yourself making nicer, prettier ones, but that comes with confidence and speed. And in speed, I mean how quick these 3 digits are, whichever hand you use, in drawing your lines. Are you going to draw them freehand? Are you going to use a square edge and then erase the gaps? Whatever you want to do. I took drafting way back in another century, and I rely on straight edges and protractors and things like that to help me keep it. If not, I don't try to keep it geometrically perfect unless it's some special one-level, one-off thing made by perfect architectural people or whatever. But I do try to keep it logical. And when you're talking about logic of digging a dungeon or whatever, see, I was never one for a lot of levels of constructed dungeons. I was much more about, oh, all right, we've built 2 partial levels and then we discovered all these caverns underneath. And that's where I would go crazy at. That's just me. Now, caverns underneath can go any which way. Don't let them find them until you feel you're confident in drawing them out, or at least explaining them out. Map making does not have to be pretty. It simply has to have the notes, symbols, sigils, runes, whatever, to enable you to know what's there, what monsters are there, etc. Don't let map making scare you. Draw your maps in pencil. When you have finished an area, your group has moved on. If you want to ink them in, then fine. Map making is the most daunting part of being a DM. You want to take a map, you don't want to build a map, well, you can always find other maps. There's map generators online. There's nothing wrong with using a map generator to help you get started. Take another map of something else, turn it over, change the names. There's so many dodges you can do to help you get comfortable doing maps. Now, underground maps, that's a whole different thing. And you want to apply a logic to them. When you have a staircase or whatever that goes down to another level, you got to have it connect and plan your other level out from there, whether it's directly underneath, off at an angle, whatever. That's a lot easier than you think. Plotting out a level of half a dozen empty or varyingly empty storerooms, a couple of caverns, that part's pretty easy. That's just drafting 101. Or you freehand them if they've been carved out instead of straight edging them. That's the best advice I can give you. Just jump in. Remember, you're describing it to them. It's their obligation to draw the map that you describe, or at the very least, keep a trail of where they were so they can get back. Absolutely, if they fail to do that, let them get lost. They'll soon learn to start making blazes on the wall. Doesn't matter if it's stone, you can still make a mark. The easiest map for players to use is a trail map. And that's just, it looks like the trail of a snail or something. And all the players have to do is, okay, they go 40 feet and then they bend over and it's just an arrow and a line and doors marked on the side perhaps, but not what's in every door, because I haven't been in every door. So you see where I'm going with this. You just got to have the skin, and they'll fill in the pockets. And, don't feel bad if you can't do a map like Greyhawk. I mean, there's only one Darlene. And she set a standard for a map that's seldom been equaled. Okay. we only had a few comments, and so this individual felt they ought to help me out here with some stuff, and some of it's silly and some of it's not. So I'm going to go through it in a orderly, methodical fashion. Dear Tim, pummeling perception in favor of intuition. Instead of perception rolls, and in combination with players' questions, I would like to posit the notion of intuition as an aspect of the game that we probably already follow to some extent. How would you allow for or simulate intuition in games? This, to roll for intuition, is the most blasphemous idea I can think of. As a player, you should develop intuition. Intuition is not something you can assign by rolling 3 6-siders or rolling 4 and throw out the low one or whatever effort you use. Intuition should be something that the player at the table develops. And I certainly allow them, I don't care how long they've been playing, what kind of player characters they've played, what classes they've played before. Intuition is intuition. It's intuition. Intuition can be just really good at putting together stray facts and things and leaping right to the heart of it. And when that happens, as a DM, you go, oh, geez, all that work. And now it's for naught. I would never, ever make a false framework for intuition. Intuition should be what the player, that friend of yours or that acquaintance of yours, brings to the table, not the player character. That's why you have stuff like intelligence and wisdom, and if one of those is low, then regardless of the intuition that the player is bringing to the table, they cannot express all of it through their player character because they lack the wherewithal to do that. Whole new level of gameplay. Much, much, much fun to be had dealing with that, around that issue. Would I use metacurrencies like luck points to simulate an intuition? No. I would never, ever structure intuition. That's an intangible that the player, not the player character, the player brings to the table. When I run games at cons, and I usually run 4 or 5, I see intuition in unexpected places. And when someone is intuitively on to me, I don't let them get spoken over by the rest of the group if they're not one of the louder ones or the more assertive ones or the more dominant ones. Intuition should be something that is trusted, particularly if you've been playing with the same DM in the same group. I don't care how great a DM you are, you're going to develop patterns, you're going to develop favorite things, monsters, traps, setups, whatever. And they're going to intuit when that's coming again. Intuit is an intangible. It's fed by all the things you've done, seen, heard, boiled down into a tea of intuition. All right, and so the next question was, what's wrong with a roll for intuition when the end result is a test of whether or not the PC listened to their intuition? Well, that's the whole thing. The PC does not exist by itself. The PC is inhabited by the P, the player. The player brings the PC to life within the framework of the stats and the rules. The PC has no existence except in here. Nah, I don't like luck points either. They're fine in the concept of the DCC and MCC. Luck is a factor that was built into their systems. So I'm not condemning the concept. I just wouldn't use them here. Okay, a little nuance in defense of Call of Cthulhu. Not all Call of Cthulhu games deal with eldritch gods directly. Call can be a lethal game nevertheless, but foes need not be so overwhelming as to give no chance of surviving them. That said, the main goal of the game system is to simulate the experience of a thrilling horror story. Players getting the creeps, getting jump scares, freaking out about a situation, and the like are the thrills players are seeking. Grim descriptions of deaths might be included in that, although they might not, but it's not any more repetitive than a fantasy setting, surely. Inventive play is very much the aim. Although I think it's wise to paraphrase Sandy Peterson, the game's original creator. Yeah, I really like Sandy, great guy. We played in a charity game or two down in Texas years ago. If you're afraid your character might die, first of all, why are you playing Call of Cthulhu? Yeah, I know Sandy would have said that, but you're using it as an argument, sort of lends credence to, well, if you're worried about you might die, don't play this game because there's a chance you'll die. And that freaks out some people. That's all. The Cthulhu big board game with monsters coming around the world and all that, that's pretty cool. But that's not the same, I know. Okay, now, there's a big stink going on. Big stink going on about a WotC announcement about they're doing away with halves. Halves, half elf, half orc, this kind of thing. And other people are virtue signaling, going, that's racist. Yeah, they're saying we have to be purebreds. That's racist. No, not necessarily. I am completely okay with never having any half anythings. I always felt, my personal opinion, and one that I interjected into many discussions at TSR, I always felt the halves were an attempt and a successful attempt to min-max. And damn it, it's Tolkien again, because of his elves marrying humans. Well, now you can have them. Okay? For some reason, in folktale, fairy tale, that type of, that's big elves as tall as humans in that. Elves in other mythologies in Europe are, 4 feet tall. I don't think that they all the elves ought to look like Legolas. I'd rather have the elves in my world aren't tall, slender, handsome with pointy ears. So, they never would have worked in my world anyway. Half orcs. All right, let's look at this. Based on a fantasy, grant you, prevailing wisdom is orcs are not friendly with humankind, depending upon whose orcs, again, you're using. They can be at least as big as humans. They can be larger than humans. They can be much stronger than humans. They can have more endurance. They're slow, they're stupid, and they don't fight well, as we see in the movies, all the Tolkien movies. I always thought that what's the advantage to being a half-orc? Well, you hit harder, you get more hit points, and you have more stamina, or whatever. Well, that's min-maxing. I have no problem not having half anything. Let's look at the biology of orcs. Anybody's orcs. Tolkien's orcs, anybody else's orcs. Mostly it's all Tolkien's orcs. They're created up out of mud and whatever. There's no mention of genes or genetics or anything like that. I mean, they're hatched out of mud. How did that happen? That half-orc. How did that happen? If we follow the majority of the canon of orcs, about orcs, they're not attractive. They don't practice good hygiene. They have many, many negatives. So, if that's the case, what's the likelihood of a human falling for an orc? Or is it more likely that the human was imposed upon? Which really creeps me out, and I don't want anything like that, because that would imply the product of a rape. Then we can go into the biology of, and I know it's fantasy, but you have to have a basis somewhere. You have to have a platform you build upon. So let's look at the genetics. Humans can't mate with dogs. Dogs don't mate with cows. The genetics aren't compatible. I'm not a racist, as anybody knows me knows. I am a speciesist. I don't think that fantasy needs to mingle species. Not because it's just because I can't foresee a circumstance where it isn't the result of something very nasty. You can have nasty monsters. Do you have to go to that level of nasty? My opinion. I did a bad thing yesterday and today. Bad thing. I received from Jolly at Kenzer in the Nights 2 bundles. Now, bundles are all the comic strips and jokes and 4 issues of the comic each. And I binge read them a little over a day. Shame on me. I can't help it. I haven't been a Knights fan from the very beginning. I came into them late and started by going back and reading the bundles from the beginning so I could follow the revolution. And of course, I've spoken of them many, many, many times. I fall into that wormhole that Jolly writes every month, and only climb out when there's nothing left, and always disappointed that it's already over. I'll probably go back and read them again, and then I'll file them away with the other 73 bundles. Isn't that amazing? 300 issues he's done already. So he's got many bundles yet to go. It's amazing. Okay, one last thing. The Patreon folks, the high-enders, you know who you are. I'm trying to figure out something to give you in return for your level of support. Now, I do the rant every now and again. That's for mid-level and high level. And I appreciate all the levels, don't get me wrong. But I originally set out to do Q&A sessions once a month for the high levels. Now, the last one I set up, I gave what I thought was plenty of advance notice, at least a week or 10 days, that it was going to be, okay, we can't seem to settle on a night, so you need to contact me and let me know what nights you think would work better for something of that nature or something else you'd like to see me do. I don't do seal tricks, and I don't do nose balances of round balls. Well, I guess all balls are round. Well, yeah, all sports balls are round. Anyway, almost went down a dark alley there. What's happening? Nothing. Oh, yeah, I'm going to Florida next week. So there will be one of these. But it might be shortened because I'll be leaving early the next morning after I record this. Can't wait. Going down to Fort Lauderdale, they had 27 inches of rain the last 2 days, and they closed the airport. I can hardly wait. Be my luck, go back to Florida for the first time in umpteen years and get there for a monsoon and walk around wet the whole time. Okay, so upper level guys, let me know what you're trying, what would be something cool that you'd be interested in doing. No coming to my house, no going to your house. Other than that, I can't think of anything immediately. In any event, Dodata Gobi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. PSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.